Alrighty. So we're going through Anime Week. We're talking about different anime and cool stuff about them. Kind of, you know, analogies and lessons learned and stuff like that. And one cool thing is relatively recent anime, Rising of the Shield Hero, and that was one of those controversial ones, right? But we're not going to be talking about the whole rape allegation thing that happened at the beginning of the show. Just right after that, the slavery conversation, the hard hitting conversations there in Rising of the Shield Hero. So pretty much, the main character is Shield Hero. He needs a partner to level up with because it's an isekai. You're out in another world that's not a video game, and you have to level up and get experience, right? And so, he has to get someone to partner with so he can level up. And so he finds this slave girl, Raftalia. And so he's like, okay, cool. You can help me, kill some stuff and it'll be great. And so the eventually she gets used to it. She's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And thank you for all the things you're doing for me. And he gives her for food that, he's just nice to her. He treats her well. He heals her wounds. He from when she was being beaten as a slave. He helps her through her nightmares from the tragic events that led her into slavery. Right, like she's got a hard time. She's got a hard life, and he makes it that much easier. Right, he makes her life easier by treating her well. And so eventually she likes being with him, right? And so then it's like, yeah, well, she may have gotten into this relationship as a slave and not having a choice, but at this point, she really likes him and likes being with him. And so it's like, yeah, I want to be with you. I want to be your partner, right? She doesn't even think of herself as a slave anymore, right? But then Shield Hero goes back to town, and all of the other heroes are like, "You have a slave? Evil, dude! Don't you know? Slavery's bad." And so then eventually they try to take Raftalia and like, hey, slave girl, go ahead, you're free. You can just go. And so then she just like slaps the guy across the face and is like, hey, this guy was nice to me. That you may think that slavery's bad, but you didn't do anything about it. He took me out of slavery and treated me well. He didn't do anything bad, right? And so what this brings up is that everyone today unanimously agrees slavery bad, right? Don't you know? Slavery bad. But why? I mean, I'm not saying that slavery isn't bad. Don't get me wrong. Slavery is bad, for sure. But why? What's the reasoning? Why is it bad? Because if you don't know why it is bad, then maybe you'll just reproduce it. That the reason it was bad for her in the show, Raftalia, is because she didn't get to have any say in her own life. She didn't get to make any choices, who she was with, what she was doing, any of that. And then finally, with the Shield Hero, she got to make her own choices. She got to be herself. She got to make her own decisions. But what happened? This guy who said, huh, slavery bad. What did he do? He took away her decision to associate herself with the Shield Hero. She wanted to be with the Shield Hero, and he's like, nah, you don't get to be with the Shield Hero. Get out of here. You're free, right? I set you free. But that's not what she wanted. That's not freedom if she can't make her own decisions, right? And so what does she do? She says, hey, this is like the only person on the face of the earth I actually want to spend time with. So she rejoined his party, and she even got a new slave crest to, make herself his slave again, because, it's anime and it's kinky and whatever. But yeah, that's how it goes. People say something's bad, right? Slavery's bad. Racism's bad. Whatever, it's bad. But if you don't think of why is it bad, you're not going to get rid of it. I've talked in previous weeks about how, people are not treated as people, right? They're treated as objects. I've talked about how work is pretty much just slavery. That when you have a job, your boss is telling you everything you have to do, and, well, if you don't listen, then you can just be fired, right? That everything hinges on the happiness of your master. Well, how is that any different from slavery? Because if you don't think about what slavery is, why it's bad, well, then you're just going to recreate it and call it something different. Because it's not slavery, it's employment. It's not slavery, it's being a tax-paying citizen. It's not slavery, she's just a prostitute. That when you're a slave, the reason it's bad is not because of the work you're doing or who you're working for. The issue is that you are coerced to be in that situation. You don't choose this, right? And so you might think, aha, there you go. So we just need to make sure that they are able to freely leave and that they are, voluntarily entering the situation, and then boom, it's not slavery. Perfectly fine, right? Like with prostitution. Some woman's down on her luck, has no money, and she says, I can't get a job, I can't do anything, my kids need to eat, I guess I better sleep around, I better get paid for it, right? And so they go ahead, and they can leave any time, right? Of course they can. They're strong, independent women, after all. They can leave at any time. And it's voluntary. Of course, they chose to go into this profession. Right? And yet, we still call prostitution bad. Why? Well, because it is. Of course it's bad. Like, don't second guess yourself on that. It is bad, for sure. But why is it bad? It's because she's taking something from herself. Taking something from herself, scooping it out, and handing it to someone for monetary gain. for an easier life. And that's why slavery's bad. It's not because of this coercion. That, oh, if they volunteered to be whipped and chained up, well, then it's fine then, right? If they just volunteered to have me treat them like inhuman scum, well, then it's fine then. They can leave at any time they want, provided they don't want their paycheck. That we have cornered certain people in such a way that their choices are so few to be able to actually make it, that they have to resort to terrible things. But that's the bottom level. Just above that, they're not in poverty. Sure. They're, let's say, lower middle class, right? But they're working paycheck to paycheck. They have a house, fantastic, and a car, great. But can they ever quit? Well, if they want to be homeless, sure. Right? And you see, the issue with the slavery is not their compensation package. It's not even whether or not they wanted to be a slave. Because people, believe it or not, signed up to be slaves at one point in history. Didn't make slavery right, did it? No, the thing that's wrong is you're taking yourself, your life, who you are, what you are, and you're selling it. We talked about this earlier in the week with Full Metal Alchemist, right? That you can't put a price on your soul. But with slavery, you do. That you say, okay, I'm all right giving up this list of freedoms. I'm okay with giving up this amount of time. I'm okay giving up this amount of choices. I'm okay with giving up all this stuff. And I'm selling it to the highest bidder. So what has changed since the days of slavery? Well, in times of slavery, you would be pretty much abducted and sold off at auction to a master. So now the difference is, now we wander into that auction voluntarily and we do the auctioning. And so, you only auction yourself out a few times in your lifetime, so you're probably not very good at it. So you even get a worse price for it, huh? I mean, of course, before the other person, the auctioneer, would be the one getting the payment, not you. So hey, now every person gets to be their own slave auctioneer. Congratulations. You get to negotiate that hot price. Well, unless you're a temp worker. Then you do still have a slave auctioneer, right? Because they make up the difference, yeah? That's how temp work works. So temp workers, they're still auctioned off. Everyone else gets to auction off themselves. But then what else changed? Well, the type of work changed, right? Except not always, right? We got those The migrant workers, right? They're still doing the same stuff that the slaves used to do. But now we have even more technological jobs. We have people who are selling themselves out for hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Oh man, super high skilled slaves for sure. Don't you think it's weird that the smartest people in our society aren't even close to the richest? That if you are PhD, right? You're middle class. That if you take that PhD and you do tons of research, top of the line, very smart, that even of the people with PhDs, you're ahead of them, right? Middle class. But if you are not just a really good researcher, but you are world famous researcher, you are world renowned. Everyone knows your studies, your stuff. You may have even gotten a Nobel Prize, right? Upper middle class. Huh? There you go. Like, there are garbage truck owners that make more money than these literal geniuses. And that should be concerning. Not because the garbage truck owner, they just lucked into this, the garbage money, right? The garbage lobby. Like, what are you even talking about? People work hard for themselves, and then they rake in money hand over fist. But then there's people who work hard for someone else, and that someone else makes money hand over fist. The person working hard, they do okay. Maybe. Depends what the job is. And that's the issue here. Why is that wrong? It feels bad, sure. But why is it wrong? Is it wrong because the two paychecks are uneven? Was the real problem with slavery not the whips, not the coercion, but the paycheck? If they just had a bigger paycheck, then it'd be fine. Like, abduct me in the middle of the night all you want, but give me a good salary at least. Like, is that really the complaint? The issue is that you're not building something for yourself. We talked about generations building upon each other. But when you're a slave, you don't get to do that, do you? You're building on someone else's family tree. They get the benefits of your labor, not you. And that's exactly what happens with jobs too. You can work at a company for years, an entire lifetime. Does that matter to your kid? Not really. They're not going to work at that company. And if they do, it's not going to be like they get that much. They're not even going to get a pay increase from it. The most they would get is an easier time getting hired. A foot in the door. Meaning that you can work 50 years at a company, diligently, hardworking, and you're going to be making them lots and lots of money, and that can get you a legacy for your kid. that is equivalent to a good resume. So you could either work for 50 years or you can bust out the Google and get some resume tips. Equivalent. You're not adding anything by working for someone else. You're adding to them, sure. And maybe the thing you're working on does have knock-on effects down the line. It helps people. You figure out some cool technologies and that becomes a thing in the future. For sure. That could happen. Of course. Happens all the time. But you're not building on your family. You're building on someone else's family. For someone else's family. Not yours. And that's the real issue here. Is back when in medieval Europe there was serfdom, right? You would have the serfs and the lord. And the serfs were tied to the land and they worked the land. And it wasn't slavery. Because you see, the slaves got to own like half of the land. How could that possibly be slavery? Look at how well they're being compensated. Like the slave would be given the food scraps from the table, but the serf gets the leftovers straight from the field. Big upgrade. And so the point of all this is to think, what is the reason behind these moral statements? Like in the Rising of the Shield Hero, why is slavery bad? Well, because she doesn't get to be a person. The character didn't get to make her own decisions. And so she was beaten and abused, malnourished, mistreated. She didn't get a say in any of it. And everyone just looked past and said, hey, that's what happens sometimes. And so the cure, it didn't even matter if she was free or slave. Doesn't matter. What mattered was that she was treated like a person. That's what fixed it. And so, I'm not saying you have to quit your job. It doesn't matter. I'm not quitting my job, right? It's that understand what matters is not your work. What matters is your kids, your family. What matters is what you build up for yourself, not for someone else. That's what matters. So was slavery bad? Yeah. So is employment. So is a lot of stuff. But there was also people in history that used slavery as a tool. They bottomed out of society. They had no skills, no abilities at all. They couldn't do anything. And if they didn't make a decision quick, they probably would have starved. And so they sold themselves into slavery so that their kids wouldn't have to go through that same hardship. And then their kids wouldn't be slaves. And then their kids would be able to build and grow. That made sense. And so it's not the slavery that's bad per se. treating people bad is always bad, of course. And not giving people choices is, of course, bad. But the real thing, why so many times slaves felt so cheated, was not because, oh, they didn't get a choice in the matter. It wasn't because, oh, they're not well compensated. It was because the things that they did do, the things that they did build, wasn't going to them for their benefit or for their kids. It's going to some other guy. And that's hard enough. But then when they don't even appreciate you for it, well, that gets even harder. And so, think about it. If you were to leave your work tomorrow, wouldn't they just replace you? I'm not saying that you need to, mess things up so that way everything like falls down and everything is destroyed as soon as you leave because, they could never make it without you. Like it's a good thing that the whole company doesn't collapse when you're gone. But understand, you're not necessary for them. And that's okay. Because you are necessary for you. You're the only one who can make your life better. And so, focus on that. Focus on where you are needed. Focus on where you are not only important, but vital. Improve your own life. Build so your family can have more. Not more material stuff, but more knowledge, wisdom, maturity. So that way they can make great progress on whatever they choose and not be held back by all of the mistakes you made, that your parents made. The reason why slavery is bad is because all of your potential is being sold off to someone else. We're all people, we're all human, we're all children of God. And we have this infinite potential in us to do so much, which is why it's so sad to see that go to whoever. So, be a little bit selfish about it. Build for yourself. Build so that way you can be better. And then, hand it off to your kids. And that way, it'll be even easier for them.